guys, welcome to the Relationship Reflections podcast. I'm Lexi, and I am accompanied by...
Marlee.
Marlee is a dear friend. It's weird to be like, you're also my assistant.
Yeah.
And you've helped me run my life. And everything that we've done, anything you've seen out there, it has been talked through, voice memoed, or texted about with Marlee.
Yeah.
Like, literally.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so today we're doing a very organic, authentic conversation to close out the first season of the Relationship Reflections podcast, and then prep for the new season of the Relationship Reflections podcast. Yeah. And you guys get a sneak peek behind the scenes with a conversation with us.
Yeah, I'm just gonna talk to you about kind of how this podcast got started and what you've learned throughout it. It's gonna be fun.
Let's go. I'm not gonna lie, at first when we talked about doing this, I wasn't nervous, but I think today when we were setting up, I was like, I'm really nervous.
Yeah, I'm currently very nervous.
Well, let's be nervous together with our coffee.
Okay. So I guess I kind of view this podcast journey in like two phases. So one was like the relationship and you making these reflections just kind of to help yourself process.
Yeah, for myself.
And I think also too, just with the idea that it might go somewhere, because I feel like you do everything with that kind of in mind.
That's so true. Everything I do, I'm like, maybe one day other people will see it.
Right. So, but then transitioning to the podcast where it is coming to
public eye.
Yeah. So prior to the podcast, what was your relationship with dating in general like?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, so prior to the podcast, you know this, which is fun. I feel like I dated so many people. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. I had dated people that I had committed to a year of singleness. And so we were really good friends during the year of singleness. And so, yeah, for people that don't know, Marlee and I got to walk on that journey together. And so during the singleness journey, there was definitely like people I talked to and it was like, well, hey, are you single or are you really not single?
Right.
But not in like an exclusive committed relationship. And so the relationship that I got into was super committed. And I'm going to just say this. I think when I commit something, I want to win. Like I want it to succeed. So for me, it was like, this is it. I'm going to get married. This is the relationship. And we can put like Christian constructs in that too. Like I did the right thing. I waited for a year of singleness. This is my person. And then when we broke up, it was so like destructive to my soul, which is sad to even say that, but it's like, I was so distraught. But I think looking back, I was distraught on like, how come this isn't the story I thought? How come I didn't win? What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
God, are you good? Like all those deep questions. Yeah. And so I think, dating before, are you asking dating before the relationship or before the podcast?
I mean, both.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there is those two phases I talked about, but I feel like it also just kind of like, it's not super linear.
Yeah, it isn't super linear. Yeah, so like before the podcast, you're talking about before that relationship. I'm trying so hard not to use names.
I know. Yeah, before that relationship, but more specifically, I was thinking before you started recording the podcast and like going on that journey of growth.
Okay. So yeah, before the podcast, I think I wanted to operate in all these like lines, but then I did them really poorly.
That's honest.
Right? Like I went to this conference and I was like, I'm going to be single for a year. And then after that, the next person I date, I'm going to marry. Because I did the right thing. But that's not what happened.
Right.
During the singleness, I did it clumsy.
Which we're human.
Which we're human. but I did it clumsy. So I had like people I was talking to, but I wasn't committed because I'm not dating. I'm single. Then I met the person that I did choose to date. And we were friends for a long time, for a few months. Then decided to date. And then when we dated, I was like, this relationship, I want to win. It needs to win. I did the right thing. Let's do this relationships class. In my eyes, it was with the intention to marry, all these things. And so I think I tried to follow these linear lines and then did it really poorly. But then was super disappointed with the outcome because I tried my best to like fit these lines.
Right. Do you think, or is it possible that the reason that some of your motivation for like making this relationship work, even when, I mean, maybe you didn't realize, but whether or not you realized that it was right, could have been because of your singleness?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. I think, again, anything I do, I want to win. I want to excel. I want the golden star. I want it to be excellent. So I'm like, if I'm investing this much time and energy, it's got to work. But I think, this is hard to admit. I didn't expect this to come up.
Sorry.
I think I wanted the good story.
Yeah.
I wanted the Christian story. I did a year of singleness. And then after the year of singleness, I'm going to get married. And we're going to have this book released about how the singleness journey, the result is the person you're supposed to marry. Because we were working on that. So during the singleness, we were keeping track of like the things we were processing and the things God was teaching. And so I think if I'm really, really honest with myself, I wanted it to work because I wanted the story. And I didn't realize that till this moment. I'm not even gonna lie. This is good.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy? I think that I have put so much pressure on myself and maybe even other people on like, well, what is the right way? Let's do the blueprint. And I think I've learned that like every relationship is different for every person. Every person's story is different. And so whatever story I end up getting, I want to fall in love with that story for myself instead of trying like to force a beautiful story. And so I also think I've gotten a lot more honest. But I wasn't aware I wasn't honest with myself. I thought I was.
Right.
But I think I was striving. Like, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. Marlee, you're a 9. I love 9s. No, but I think that striver, achiever, I have to like tone that down in dating. Because if not, I'll be wanting to achieve and win and driving us places we're not even supposed to be in.
Yeah.
So I think I've just chilled out a little bit more. How do you think I've changed?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, you've chilled out a little more. I think that rings true. I feel like it seems like you're kind of more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like intentional, but like, not that you weren't before. Like, I feel like there's a difference in the goal. Like, I feel like before, like you were saying, like, I don't know if I recognize, like, really noticed this, but looking back, it's like, okay, the goal was the story. And I think that that's kind of, like, looking back, you can kind of see that. But now it seems more like the goal is, like, okay, what is actually going to be good for me? What is honoring God? And, like, what's the best choice to make? Like, it seems like that's what's changed.
Like, what's the one right next choice? I think we talked about that. Like, before, I'm so focused on the future. So, like, are we going to get married? Are we going to win? Are we going to be this dream? And now I'm like, do I like you? Do you like me? How was this date?
Right.
Instead of constantly projecting, like, what is the future going to be? What is the future going to be? It's like, am I being myself? Are they being themselves?
It's more in the moment.
Yeah, a lot more in the moment. I've chilled out. That's so interesting. But I still am, and you're right, and I think a little bit more intentional about processing what I feel in that moment instead of trying to, like, live for a future that isn't even certain.
Yeah.
That probably happens a lot, though. Like, I'm sure there has to be other people that that lived like that. You know what I mean? Even in the Christian world, I do think we're so like,
Totally get caught up in that.
yeah, like marriage. But like, do you even like them today? Right?
Yeah. I mean, we could go off, I feel like.
I know, we could go off. Next question.
When you first started recording the voice memos, did you have anything envisioned for them at that point?
I think when I first started recording them, I was just talking to myself. I had a 25-minute drive to church because I was doing ministry school. On the way there and on the way back. And in the morning, I couldn't jam the music the same. So it was like my thoughts were so present. And I just was recording all those thoughts. And honestly, when I first started, no, it was like relationship reflection, or it was just like, okay, Lex. It was really like, start off like, okay, Lex. And it was conversations to myself. And then there was a person in particular in our town who had shared with me that she was going through a divorce. And I just loved her. And we would talk and we would text, and every now and then we'd check in. And there was a day she like texted that she was having a hard day. And I was like, let me send you one of my voice memos to myself. And when I sent it to her, I think it clicked. It was like, this is genius. Like,
I could use this.
This could be helpful. No, but really, I think I sent it to her and I was like, hey, that is so crazy. Like, I just talked about this with myself. I totally, and I get it. Like, she was in a different place. She was getting a divorce. I was just in a relationship I thought I was going to get married in. But it was like, something I'm doing is helpful to me. Let it be helpful to you.
Yeah.
And then I think when that had happened, it was early on enough that I was like, okay, when I keep recording these, I need to be more intentional about what does the audio sound like. I need to think when I'm recording it, let me not record it just for myself. Let me record it like thinking about if somebody else is going to listen to it. At that point, I don't think I thought I'm going to be a whole collective podcast. I think I was like, hey, I could share this with friends. And then the way it came about, an audio engineer, audio editor, student had seen a friend at a wedding. At the wedding, he was like, I'm looking for work. Do you know any work? And the other friend was like, I have this friend named Lexi. I got to put you in contact. And you know what's funny? So when I met with Casey, who is our editor.
Shout out
to Casey editing this as we speak. No, whatever you see, he edited the audio. It's funny because even when I hired him, I totally forgot who referred him till like months later. I was like, thanks, Chris. Thank you, Chris. But I met with Casey and he was like sharing with me some of his work and what he did at school. And when he was sharing what he had done at school, I was like, hey, I have like all these voice memos. If I sent you like 20 or 30, will you listen to just a couple and see if it's worthy of a podcast? I don't even know. I don't know where to begin. And the funny thing is, like, I listen to podcasts, but not that much the way other people do. I'm a YouTuber. I watch YouTube a lot, and I listen to YouTube a lot. And so I really wasn't sure. I'm like, I don't even know how many episodes. I don't know the structure. I don't know the intros, the outros. I don't even know if this is feasible. Maybe it's like one long 30-minute episode, like, because I think in video. So I wasn't really sure what to do with audio. But he thought in audio. And so when he was like, this is so, I think that you really have something. I think his belief stirred my belief more than what I had intended. It was like, oh, I can share it every now and then. And like, you're right. I always think with like, this can go somewhere. I don't know how, but it will. Like, that's my brain, my creative brain. But I don't think I expected it to go as well as it's going to. Like, people are, I don't know if I've even shared this with you. We have like over 300 listens already.
I think I've seen that.
And then Anchor just asked for a commercial to promote Anchor. And they did like a sponsorship ad. So like, we don't get paid till they do a ton of impressions. So go find the Relationship Reflections podcast and go click it. Click that commercial. Watch the commercial over again. But like, that's cool, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I didn't expect it to have legs, but Casey saw it and knew it would.
Sweet. Yeah.
Marlee, when did I first tell you about the idea of and Casey working on it? Did I tell you after Casey had started editing it?
No, because I remember you mentioning that you'd met this like guy who does audio named Casey, and that you're like pretty excited about what that could mean. And I'm trying to remember, was that when we did that big cardboard map, or was that something else?
That map is still in my room.
Good. Was that for the books that we're doing, or was that?
You might be right, but I do remember we wrote, I think at this point I agreed to have Casey start cleaning up the audio. But you're right, we did. So there was a day that Marlee and I sat in this living room, and she needed to help me put all my ideas on something.
No.
Tell them about it, Marlee.
Well, it was a big piece of cardboard, and I think it was the backside.
It was an Amazon box.
Oh, it was the Amazon box. What was it from?
You had a package or something, but we took it apart.
Okay.
So it was this big, long cardboard.
Yeah, we just opened it up, so it would be a big piece of
paper. And we wrote out all the ideas, and we were working on what is the next book we were gonna do. And then when we were talking about the next book, because the Mountain Climber is out right there, the Mountain Climber. I don't even know if you can see it. Mountain Climber, maybe? Let me just show it. There you go, the Mountain Climber, available on Amazon. Available on Amazon. No, but we were talking about the next book, and then it was interesting because you and I did the singleness journey together.
Right.
Yours was 6 months. Mine was a very messy, sloppy year.
Mine wasn't.
We'll work on the next book and tell you all about it. Stay tuned. That's actually on that cardboard. But then it was like, wow, we had a ton of things about relationships in particular.
Yeah.
It was like that was the one thing on the bubble of cardboard. On all of the information, it was like relationships is a thing. And then I think we were like, okay, the focus in this season is Casey doing the podcast first, where we're going to work on the next book. We're going to continue the relationships. That's how it came about.
Yeah, okay. Because I don't remember specifically, like, when that was. But I do remember, like, talking about it and being, like, just getting really excited. Like, yeah, like, this relationships topic is something that, like, I'm really, like, hype about.
Yes!
And I know, like, and it goes back even to when we, like, first started meeting and we were, like, planning out their, like, curriculum and all the things and, like, what we should talk about and, like, just all these different topics. And
yeah.
So
that's crazy to even think about. Maybe that's just like a note to, if you're a creative watching, like, keep pushing forward, because the relationship theme had been here for years, but we didn't really execute till a few years later in a different way than we thought. And we're still going back to that as a reference and as a start. And so, like, I think that's something that I'm really blessed to have you in my life, because, like, I really love you a lot, because, like,
I love you too.
I get started, but it's like I don't continue. And when you have someone like you who's like, hey, where are you at with that? And, like, I just really appreciate you. You're so for me that I always want to be just so for you too. Like, I love you.
I love you too.
And even this episode is because, like, there's something that interests you, something that you want to do.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I was going to say, I think on that note of, like, projects getting done, I feel like I like to, like, I can't do too many things at once, I feel like. So, like, when we get started on one thing, I'm like, all right, we gotta push it to the finish so that we can start the next thing, because I'm excited about all the things, and I want to, like, keep it going.
Thank God, because me, I'm, like, building 10 houses, and I'm like, I wish house number 1 was done, and Marlee's like, well, it can't be, but you're building 10 houses right now.
We need to build stairs.
Like, let's choose one house. Okay, we finished the foundation. Let's get to let's do the stairs. Let's do the door. Let's do the walls. Yeah. And then when one house is done, I'm like, that's awesome. Let's do it again. And you're like, okay, well, which one?
Right. So we could do so many. How do you think you evolved or changed during the course of recording? Yeah, during the course of recording.
Ooh, so that's my individual process, not even releasing to the public.
Right, so we're still on that phase.
And maybe we should give a timeline. So I had recorded these from, like, October, and then we didn't release them till over the summer. So October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, like 8 months of recording before they're released to the public. And 8 months of recording and editing, because they had started being edited already in the new year. Maybe it was March, but during the recordings, man, it was painful. It was so good, though. I think I really evolved in honesty with myself. Even like, I grew in confidence. I grew in self-love. That's so silly to say. But like, I think self-love is so important. But I think I didn't expect by going back that I would find that. Like, I hate to say this, there's some quotes out there on Instagram and like in the world that are just not correct.
Right.
Follow your heart. Like, no, your heart is deceptive. It'll lead you to places you really shouldn't be in. Like, you know what I mean? Like, follow your feelings. If you think about it every day, then you should go after it. No, if it's drugs, you shouldn't go after it. And people probably think about it every day. You know what I mean? Like, so things that aren't good for you. But I think people also say, like, you can't go back on what hurt you to find your healing. I disagree. I needed to face what hurt me and then take ownership and say, I'm in control of my thoughts of myself and my thoughts of the future I want. And I do have power and a say on like where I'm going to go. And so I think when I started, I felt like a victim. This was done to me. And I think by the end, I was like, this process of facing pain is so good. I'm so grateful, which is so silly, but I'm like, I'm so grateful. I am grateful I've gone through that. I'm grateful at what is to come. I'm grateful that I can date more healthily. I'm grateful that I didn't get married. That's crazy. But and it's funny, I realized all those things in the communication to myself process. And I would say with myself and God and friends. I mean, behind scenes, there was more conversation with you guys. It wasn't just my car. And I think now when those emotions and triggers come up, because they still do, the days I want to cry about it. The way I've evolved is I know how to process my feelings better. I have a lot more self-love, a lot more grace, and I'm just less afraid. I was a really afraid and kind of insecure person at the start of that podcast because I was so unsure. And so I was, by the end, there was like forgiveness. There's like things I'm like very sure of. Yeah, I feel like with most breakups, it's kind of like the rug is pulled out from underneath you and you're kind of That's true. You don't go like, I saw that coming.
Yeah, usually no, I feel like.
True.
Or if you did, you were in denial still. I feel like that was my case a lot of the time.
That's real. Maybe every breakup.
But I think it sounds like going back and like kind of examining what happened and like looking over the wreckage, you kind of found your footing to be able to like move forward.
Okay, Pastor Marlee, preach. I'm just kidding. Oh God. I love it.
Okay. Over the course of like starting to put it out into public eye and like just this side of recording and submitting it to Anchor and whatnot. What have you learned?
So what have I learned since I released it to the public? Yeah, because there was a lot of time. You know, Marlee, I thought I was a vulnerable person. But then you release things to the public.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you're like, maybe I'm vulnerable with people I trust and I love.
Right.
I'm actually not that vulnerable with the world. I'm a 3. I actually do have masks that kind of like, this is the Lexi at church. This is this girl. This is the MC. This is the poet. And so I think what I learned about myself when I released it to the public was, I think, do I like myself? And can I be my same self everywhere? And if I'm honest with myself, when we released it to the public, I was like, am I too Christian for certain people? I didn't want to offend people. I was really worried about what people thought about, in particular though, this was interesting, of all the things, I was worried about if I was too Christian. Because there was a series in particular, like the forgiveness episodes were very Christian, visual, Holy Spirit experiences. And that's the part that a lot of people don't know about me.
Oh, really?
I feel like, yes, but those that are super, because the friends that are not Christians, like, I'm not going to sit there and be like, as you were talking, God gave me this vision of you, you know what I mean? Or actually, I really believe in God because I had this prophetic experience where there was angels in my room. Like, I'm very forward with love. I'm not very forward with my prophetic encounters. And so I think that little section of forgiveness where I'm like, I got this image of Jesus hanging on a cross and forgiveness. That was a section, even as I talk about it now, I still feel scared. But the choice to like let it all out there was also the choice for me to say, this is actually really me. This is the real Lex. Like, the Lex Christian is not a front, and the Lex Fun MC is the same girl. Like, I you know what I mean? The girl who you're like, you rock heels all the time. I'm like, yeah, and guess what? I don't think God's mad at me that I'm wearing heels. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's how I changed, is I didn't realize there was a part of me I was kind of like muting a little bit, or like just lowering the volume in different places. And so I was like, okay, this podcast is like, there is no filtered Lex, because there was no filtered Lex when I recorded it.
Right.
Because it was me.
Right.
So then I chose, now it's like, I actually am letting you in. And what's cool, there was a lot of freedom too, because I was like, if people don't like it, whatever. I'm not going to go re-record it. I'm not going to go clean it up. It was me. And I'm in process, and I like that I'm in process, and I can still change my mind tomorrow, and I will continue to be in process, and I like that girl, and I like who she is today, and I like who she'll be tomorrow. And so I think that got evolved. That was the new level of freedom. It was freedom to record it, like, for healing, but then freedom to release it. It was like, I accept me whether you accept me or not. And that's so cool. And the hope is that other people could feel that too, or experience that too. And I'm like, hey, it's okay to be in process. You may think I'm like, she's handling her breakup great. Look at her. She has voices and all these things. And it was like, actually, like, this is the real of what I'm processing. So, yeah.
So I want to ask this question directly, just to give you an opportunity to, like, answer directly. Do you feel healthier?
Yes. But disclaimer, because I think there's a misconception that all of a sudden you're healed. There's still moments where there's pain or disappointments, but I am so much healthier in handling obstacles. Yeah. So yes, affirm yes. Yeah, I'm way healthier.
Great. And that brings me to my last question, which is, are you seeing anyone right now?
Dun, 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 dun. See, this is fun. I am seeing someone right now. However, we are not officially dating. We are spending time together, seeing if we want to work towards an intentional, exclusive partnership, which leads to the next podcast.
Yeah.
Yes, season 2 is about talking with couples. Season 2 is about talking to healthy couples I respect, and couples that have gone through obstacles and navigated through them. So one of the couples you'll see is a family I actually lived with, which I'm moving out. Love you guys. Married for over 20 years. And even them, they have talked about so many of their friends gone through divorce, and they haven't. They've stuck it through. So what does it take? And I think that's why I'm not fast to jump into a relationship, is that I want to make sure that I can see the skill set and the tools necessary for a successful relationship. So since we talked about breakups and healing from breakups, how do we move forward in dating and health? And I think the best people to go to are successful relationships. Are you excited about that?
I'm excited about that, yeah.
I'm going to try to get you on as a guest.
I know.
You're you're done with your first year of marriage.
Yeah.
Starting your second year of marriage.
Yeah, it's been about a year and a half in November.
And it's still happening.
It's still happening.
I realized I did not ask the questions on our sheet of paper I was supposed to ask. Is there anything that surprised you in the first season, in the first episodes, in the relationship reflections?
Honestly, I was thinking about this question, and I don't know if I was super surprised by anything, because I feel like we kind of talked about
Everything along the way.
Everything. Yeah. So I think probably the one episode that I was like, oh, that's cool, was just the one where you like talked to you talked to friends, where like it wasn't just your perspective, it was like other people's.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know those people. So.
You're right. You didn't know those people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was cool to hear their perspective and their take, which is why I think in this upcoming season, that's what we want, other people's perspectives. Mm-hmm. Because they have wisdom I don't have. Mm-hmm. And so come along on the journey with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I want to close out on like one reflection.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Let's close out on a reflection. To those that are going through breakups, yes, you got an inside scoop in journey. You got to see inside my journey. Mm-hmm. But I think the goal is so that people just know they're not alone. Because I think when you're going through a disappointment, and that can be anything, grief in any form, there's this feeling like no one understands. And so even though I'm digital, virtual, whatever, and then for some people I'm right here and within close proximity. There's people I know that have sat with me and said, girl, I listened to your podcast today and I needed to hear that in real time going through breakups. I just think like my hope is that you wouldn't feel alone. And thank you for letting me be me. And so even you, Marlee, thank you for letting me share and not be alone in my process, because I think that allowed me to be free. And so I'm thinking of the scripture talks about like what's in the darkness, like you bring it out to light. And I believe that like when we communicate what we're feeling, there's healing. I believe when we talk about it, there's healing. So whether it's to yourself, whether it's to God, whether it's to a journal, whether it's to a friend, I think the first step of healing is sharing. But my hope is that by going first, by being brave, by being like, hey, I'm just going to throw myself out there, that anybody in any process, even when I'm gone, like there's an opportunity to like go through it with someone, be like, yes, they get it. And so, but I think for me, it's just I'm so grateful we were able to do this podcast. And I'm also really grateful at the wins or the text messages or phone calls I get of people who feel impacted by it. And the hope is that we'll continue in the next season and just continue to mature and evolve together into like dating health, relational health. You and I too are going to talk about like how to continue like dating healthily and questions and things we're processing through and being honest and vulnerable. And so we just invite you into that journey.
Yeah. I'm excited about this space that you are creating that allows people to be brave.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
Hashtag be brave. On that note, I think we did a good job.
Yeah.
On that case, I'm Lexi Rosado.
I'm Marlee Wells.
And this is Relationship Reflections.
That was season 1.
Woo, we did it. Oh my goodness.
If you want to hear the rest of this episode, go ahead and check out the Relationship Reflections podcast on Spotify. You won't regret it. Go ahead and give it a shot.